She walked down the aisle, with a smile everyone believed everyone except her own heart, which had already shattered hours early, when she realized the perfume he bought that morning wasn't for her, but for the woman he had been loving behind her back. No one saw the storm beneath her calm expression. No one knew she was marrying a man whose betrayal smelled stronger than the roses lining the path she walked. No one knew she was already planning her quiet escape. I used to think that love made people glow on their wedding day. That joy softened every edge of fear, that sincerity seeped from every vow. Instead, my wedding morning began with a notification cold, emotionless, a simple bank alert that broke open a truth I had been too afraid to face. I was sitting with my hair half done, my face bare, my heart beating with nervous excitement. The alert appeared like a slap. Luxury fragrance boutique, rupees 42,000. It took me a second to breathe. That was the boutique he once claimed was too expensive for casual gifts. Yet here he was making a purchase hours before our ceremony. At first, I tried to be reasonable. Maybe it was a surprise gift. Maybe he wanted to spoil me on our big day. But something heavy pressed on my chest, reminding me of the nights he came home late, smelling faintly of a perfume I didn't own. The days he hesitated before answering calls. The way he had started saying, "I'm just tired," a little too often. The way he kissed me goodbye, like a routine he wasn't fully present for. I didn't want to believe it. Not today. Not on the day I was supposed to start my forever. But forever had already cracked. Before I could think more, the makeup artist called me back to the mirror. My mother entered the room eagerly, tears in her eyes, excited for her daughter's future. I forced a smile for her sake. Her joy was the only thing holding me together. She didn't deserve to see my fear, my suspicion, my shaking hands. She had waited years for this day, prayed for my happiness, imagined a life of stability for me. I swallowed the ache forming in my throat. When he entered the venue later that morning, he looked perfect, handsome, calm, confident. People surrounded him, congratulating him, patting his back. To everyone else he was the ideal groom, the charming gentleman, the man ready to start a new life. To me he was a stranger wrapped in familiar skin. He walked toward me with a grin that tried too hard to be sincere. I rose from my seat when he reached me, acting like nothing was wrong. He hugged me tightly and I let him, but my hand slipped into his coat pocket, not out of suspicion but out of instinct, and there it was, the receipt, warm from his touch, crumpled from being shoved inside. I pulled it out just enough to see the name printed under gift recipient. For Sana. My vision blurred for a moment. A buzzing sound filled my ears. Sana was not a family member, not a friend, not someone he had ever mentioned, but I knew exactly who she was. The late-night chats he hid. The just a co-worker he had sworn she was. The woman whose perfume I had once smelled faintly on his shirt. It felt like a blade had sliced through my chest quietly, efficiently. He pulled away from the hug, unaware of what I had seen. The smile on his face remained unchanged. I forced an even bigger one in return. I folded the receipt back into his pocket with steady hands as if placing a secret in its grave. People called me to take pictures. My cousins teased him. My aunt fixed my toupee. My father kissed my forehead. Everything moved slow motion. I walked down the aisle, not to marry him, but to maintain the illusion everyone around me had built with love, effort, and hope. Shattering it now would have destroyed more hearts than mine. The hall was filled with laughter, camera flashes, blessings, and love that felt too pure for the truth festering beneath my ribs. I repeated my vows, even though my voice trembled under the weight of the lies he had woven into our story. Every promise he whispered back at me felt like a stain on the air between us. After the ceremony, we posed for photos, hundreds of them. Me smiling, him holding my waist, people clapping, cheering, commenting on how perfect we looked. But every smile I gave was hollow, stretching wider the more my heart sank. Night fell and world finally quieted. Our bridal suite smelled of candles and fresh flowers. Soft music played. He closed the door behind us and stepped closer like nothing was wrong. I stepped back with a smile that hid oceans. "I got something for you this morning," he said, excitement flickering in his eyes. He handed me a velvet box. I opened it slowly. Inside was a perfume bought simple, mid-range, nothing special. Definitely not the expensive luxury brand he had purchased at 7:12 a.m. That one had been for someone else. For Sana, this one was a substitute. A replacement he must have bought in a hurry. A lie disguised as a romantic gesture. "It's beautiful," I whispered. His shoulders relaxed, relieved that I seemed pleased. He kissed my forehead. I let him, but inside me, Something had died, replaced by an eerie calm. I wasn't the screaming type. I wasn't the explosive type. I was the silently breaking type, the kind who walks away without a sound, without a fight, without a warning. He didn't know that with every breath, I was stitching together a plan. A plan to reclaim my life, my dignity, my peace. A plan to leave him not with anger, but with absence. I would let him enjoy the marriage he had destroyed before it even began. I would let him believe I was blind, naive, gentle enough to forgive the perfume he bought for his mistress on our wedding day. What he didn't know was that love can survive mistakes, but it cannot survive disrespect. And he had buried ours the moment he placed that receipt in his pocket. I looked at him, memorizing the face of the man I would soon leave behind forever. He kissed my hand, unaware of the storm that had already begun to pull me away from him. He didn't know it yet, but I was already gone. She didn't leave with a fight. She left with silence, a silence so powerful it chased him for years, a silence that echoed louder than any scream she could have given. He thought she would cry, beg, cling, or argue. He thought her heart was too soft to ever walk away. But he didn't understand the type of woman she was. When she finally broke, she broke quietly, and quietly disappeared from his life forever. Leaving him was not a single moment. It was a slow unraveling. Every day after the wedding, she shed a layer of attachment, the thread of hope, a piece of the future she once imagined with him. He went on with life, as usual, believing everything was fine, believing her polite smile meant forgiveness, believing her silence meant peace. But her silence was not peace. It was distance being built brick by brick. A quiet wall he couldn't see until it was too tall to climb. He didn't notice the signs at first. He didn't notice how she no longer reached for his hand at night, how her smile no longer reached her eyes, how she cooked his favorite meals without asking if he enjoyed them, how she no longer asked him where he was going or when he'd be home. He thought she was simply adjusting to married life. He didn't realize she was adjusting to the idea of living without him. The days felt like long rehearsals for the moment she would walk away. She continued her routines. Not for him, but for the version of herself she still respected. When he came home smelling faintly of a perfume she didn't wear, she didn't confront him. She didn't break down. She didn't demand explanations. She only folded his shirts a little more neatly and placed them gently on the bed. Her movements were soft, but her heart was hardening. One evening, he came home earlier than usual. He looked exhausted, but there was something else in his eyes, unease. He watched her quietly from the doorway as she prepared dinner. Finally, he asked, "Are you okay?" She turned, smiled politely, and said, "I'm fine." But her voice held a calmness that terrified him. It wasn't the calm before a storm. It was the calm after everything had already been destroyed. He stepped closer, trying to catch her gaze. "You've been quiet lately." "I've been thinking," she replied. "About what?" "Myself," she said. The simplicity of her answer unsettled him. He was accustomed to being the center of everything. Accustomed to her adjusting her world around him. The idea that she could be thinking about herself, truly thinking, made something inside him twitch with fear. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold him back either. Her hand lay there like a stone cold, unmoved. That night, he tried to make conversation. He asked about her day, complimented her cooking, talked about work. She listened quietly, nodding, offering small smiles. Nothing more. He didn't know that every polite nod was a nail sealing the coffin of their relationship. Days turned into weeks, weeks into a month. She withdrew money from her savings, visited a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, signed the lease without hesitation, and began sending her belongings to her sister's house in discreet increments. Her world was shifting. Her existence was moving. And he had no idea. The night before she left, she watched him sleep. She memorized the way his eyelashes rested against his cheeks, the way his chest rose and fell, the way his hand reached toward her side of the bed even in sleep. She felt nothing, not anger, not sadness, not longing. Only clarity. She had loved him fiercely. But he had killed that love. So gently, she didn't even realize it was dying until it was already cold. Morning came with a quiet sky. He left for work after giving her a distracted kiss on the forehead. Already checking his phone as he stepped out the door, she watched him leave without flinching. Then she cleaned the house, her last gift to the life she was abandoning. She washed the dishes, folded the blankets, wiped the counters, and placed the house keys neatly on the dining table. Then she wrote her goodbye. Just 11 words, written with steady hands. "You bought perfume for her. I'm giving freedom to both of us." She placed the note where he would see it the moment he entered. Then she walked out, closing the door quietly behind her. No tears, no hesitation, no regret. When he returned home that evening, he sensed the silence immediately. It wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. He called her name. No answer. He walked from room to room, confusion sharpening into panic. The wardrobe was half empty. Her shoes were gone. Her books, clothes, jewelry, all missing. His heartbeat hammered against his ribs. The note on the table taunted him. He read it once. Twice. A third time. His knees nearly buckled. He called her again. And again. And again. She didn't answer. He drove to her parents' home. They didn't know where she was. He begged them to tell him. They remained silent, their disappointment thick in the air. He went to her sister's home at midnight, pounding on the door until the neighbors watched. Her sister stepped out, arms crossed. "She doesn't want you to know where she is," she said before shutting the door in his desperation. He drove home with tears streaming down his face. He spent that night pacing the empty room, staring at her empty closet, clutching the note that had destroyed him. He called her 23 times. She didn't pick up even once. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Eventually people learned the truth. He tried to save face, telling everyone it was a misunderstanding. But whispers spread. Everyone knew. He had cheated. He had lost her. And she had vanished without looking back. Years passed before he saw her again unexpectedly at a charity event. She stood across the hall, radiant, calm, glowing in a way she never did with him. She looked like a woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. He walked toward her slowly, afraid she would disappear again. When she finally looked at him, his breath caught. "You look happy," he whispered. "I am," she replied softly. "Did someone else teach you that?" he asked, voice cracking. She smiled not out of cruelty, but out of truth. "No, I learned it the day I chose myself." Those words struck him deeper than any anger or accusation ever could. He realized then that losing her wasn't a moment. It was a lifetime of consequences he would never escape. And she walked away again, this time not out of pain, but out of strength.